For 30 years, I dedicated my entire life to my son, David. I worked tirelessly as a nurse at the General Hospital here in the city, caring for him with all the love a father can give. I gave up on my marriage when my ex-wife said she did not want to raise someone else's child. I abandoned my dreams of studying medicine. I canceled my plans to travel the world, all so he could have a better life than mine. But the day I came home and announced that I had been let go due to a department restructuring, though really because I was 55 years old in a profession that prefers recent graduates, David's first reaction was to glare at me with rage and scream that I was a burden to the family. It was in that moment I decided to stop keeping quiet and stop being the father who always sacrificed in silence. I was no longer going to accept being trampled by the boy I had raised with so much love. I decided to stand up for myself, even though I thought I had nothing more than my modest pension. What he did not know was that Mrs. Miller, an 89-year-old woman I had cared for during the last 8 years in the hospital and later at her home, had left me an inheritance of $5 million in her will. This time, I would make sure to show them that the price of mistreating me would be much higher than they could have ever imagined. When I arrived that Friday afternoon, still in my hospital scrubs, I announced to David that I would no longer be working at the General Hospital. I did not even have time to explain that the layoff had not been my decision, before his face turned red with fury and he exploded with anger. "Dad, how can you just leave a job paying $4,000 a month just like that, without any warning? What are you going to do now? Live off of us?" Those words struck me like a slap to the face, but I did not answer immediately. I knew he was under constant pressure from his wife, Sarah, and his mother-in-law, Mrs. Parker, a retired lawyer. Their family had always looked down on us. To them, David had married below his social status. Mrs. Parker never missed a chance to make malicious comments about our humble beginnings, our small apartment, and my profession as a nurse. I thought that once they found out about the inheritance I received, they would finally look at me differently, maybe even with respect. But I had not mentioned the money yet. Instead, I remembered the other reason I had come home early. "David, you didn't tell me you two were trying to have a baby. I thought I could stay here to help you during Sarah's pregnancy, and after the birth, I could take care of the baby." David's face immediately hardened. He practically scoffed with disdain. "Postpartum care requires qualified professionals, Dad. You worked as a general hospital nurse. What experience do you have in obstetrics?" Before I could answer, Mrs. Parker appeared in the living room and chimed in with that lecturing tone I hated so much. "Caring for a newborn is not just changing diapers and giving bottles. It is a science. You need people with specific training, not an amateur service." They had coordinated this humiliation perfectly. It was obvious they had rehearsed this conversation. And just like that, once again, I was tossed aside as if I had no value. I tried to stay calm and forced a tight smile. "All right, if you already have everything organized, I won't get in the way. I will leave the baby's care to you." Mrs. Parker rolled her eyes as if I had finally said something sensible. "It is better this way, but you will be financing the costs of the specialized nanny and the obstetric nurse. I will hire them myself and oversee everything." I was left speechless, feeling a tight knot in my chest. That was when David continued without missing a beat. "Exactly, Dad. You never should have left that job. Our expenses are going to double when the baby arrives. You should have kept working." At that moment, everything became crystal clear to me. He never wanted me to come home to rest or help. He only wanted my paycheck to keep flowing into the family account every month. To them, I was neither a father nor a grandfather. I was just a money-making machine. My face hardened, and I said firmly, "I am 55 years old. I think it is time to slow down and retire." David let out a sarcastic laugh that chilled my blood. "Retire? Dad, you have not even worked enough years for a full pension. What money are you going to retire on?" Those words almost made me stumble. I would have liked to work longer for my pension, but it was them who asked me to save up and help pay off the mortgage on this apartment as quickly as possible, and now they were using it against me. David pushed his hair back and snapped, "That was because your salary was always miserable. Who told you to try and live in a place you couldn't afford? You should have planned better." Sarah, trying to calm her husband down, raised her voice at me. "Enough, Robert. David is stressed about planning for the pregnancy. You are only making things worse. Now is when we need money the most, and you should be helping. You are still healthy. You could easily work another 20 years. Save that retirement talk for when you are 75. 20 more years." I froze, feeling a deep sadness that I could not even begin to describe. After everything I had given, all the sacrifices, all the hours worked, every dollar saved, I was still viewed solely as a source of income for them. That was when I saw the harsh reality. All their speeches about respect and gratitude were nothing more than empty words to keep me working. I remembered the time when David was still a pharmacy student in college and had started dating Sarah. To help them live better and impress her family, I had left the city to work as a private nurse across the country, living with my employers just so I could save enough for the down payment on an apartment in the city for them. They did not pay a single dime, but only their names were on the deed. Back then, with tears in his eyes, he had promised me, "One day when we are settled, we will take care of you. You will have the life you deserve." Now I knew what kind of life he thought I deserved, a life as a slave until the day I died. I took a deep breath, held back my tears, and said firmly, "I already told you I am retiring. It is decided. No one else is going to make decisions for me." Mrs. Parker realized I was serious and worried that I would actually stop supporting the family. She changed her tone immediately. "Listen, Robert, it is not that we don't understand you, but you have to be realistic. There isn't enough space in this apartment for you to live here forever, right? But I have a proposal. I know a wealthy family looking for a private nurse. Good salary, room and board included. You have done this kind of work before, haven't you? It would be an easy transition." David perked up at the idea. "Perfect. That way you could keep helping us with our expenses. It would be good for everyone." Mrs. Parker shrugged. "You're not the type to sit around doing nothing. Anyway, going back to work wouldn't kill you. Don't dismiss the idea so fast. At least try it." My expression turned ice cold. "I already quit. I will never work for anyone else again. Never." Mrs. Parker's smile vanished, and she looked at me calculatingly. "Well, if you really do not want to work for someone else, there is this retirement home near here. Good facilities, decent meals and lodging. You could apply for a job there, maybe as a kitchen helper, general maintenance. Something to support yourself." David rolled his eyes. "Now that makes sense. You can't live in a hotel and expect us to pay your bills. At least at a retirement home, you would support yourself. You wouldn't be a burden to us." Rage boiled in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. I looked David straight in the eyes. "Do you really think it is acceptable to send your own father to mop floors in a retirement home just so he doesn't starve?" He looked away but tried to maintain a rational stance. "Dad, be realistic. You always said you wanted to be independent. Isn't this the most dignified way to do it? You support yourself, and we don't owe each other anything anymore." And then, right in front of me, he grabbed his phone and started dialing a number. "Actually, I have an available spot right now. I called earlier to confirm. You can move in today." I could not believe what I was seeing. The son to whom I had dedicated my entire life was so desperate to kick me out that he seemed to be getting rid of an old piece of furniture. My hands were shaking, and tears began to fall without me being able to control them. "David, I gave everything to raise you. I emptied myself to buy this apartment, and now, in this exact moment, all you see in me is a burden you can't wait to throw away. This is how you thank your father." For a second I saw guilt in his eyes, but it was quickly swallowed by rage. He kicked my suitcase, knocking everything to the floor. "You think you suffered? That was your choice. If you had not separated from my mother, we wouldn't have lived in poverty. I could have grown up rich, and you destroyed that. Let me tell you something, Robert. You owe me everything for the rest of your life." I stood there motionless, staring into his eyes injected with hate, feeling a dull, relentless pain tearing through my chest like a blunt knife. He had no idea that the only reason I had separated from his mother was precisely because of him. If I had not left that marriage, that wealthy father would never have recognized David as his son. Actually, he probably would have been given up for adoption, treated like a stray dog nobody wants. Every sacrifice I made, every decision, every tear, was so he could have a chance at a full life. But now, here he was, attacking me like a cornered animal, accusing me of destroying the very future I had fought so hard to protect. I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to control the storm raging inside me, but the pain only grew. All those years of dedication, of sacrifice, of love, suddenly felt like the cruelest joke life could have ever played on me. David was not my biological son. He had been adopted. The first time I saw him, I was volunteering at Child Protective Services in the city. He was only 2 years old, thin as a bird, his lips purple, his tiny body lifeless. The director told me David had been born with a severe congenital heart defect. His biological parents had abandoned him on the steps of a church. A passing nun had heard his weak cries and brought him to the institution. I still do not know exactly what drew me to him. Maybe it was the way his eyes, full of fear and starved for affection, locked onto mine. Or maybe it was because I had lost my own father very early on. Seeing a child suffer was unbearable to me. I went home and talked to my wife at the time. After a lot of thought, we decided to adopt him. From that moment on, we traveled all over the country, looking for hospitals and specialists, doing everything we could to save David's life. But 2 years later, my wife changed. She said she was tired of raising someone else's child, that she wanted a baby of her own. She gave me an ultimatum. Either I returned David to the system, or she would leave me to raise the boy alone. I didn't hesitate for a second. I chose David. At that time, his condition was still unstable. I was afraid that sending him back to the institution would mean delayed treatment, or worse, his death. So I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs at the same time. At night, I would sit at the kitchen table with burning eyes, making crafts to sell for extra income. And somehow during those long, desperate years, I managed to keep him alive. He survived, recovered, and eventually became as healthy as any other child. He even managed to get his college degree. I never told him the truth about his past, not because I wanted to lie, but because I didn't want to burden him. He was already a sensitive and insecure kid. I didn't want him carrying the weight of knowing he had been rejected first by his biological parents and then by his adoptive mother. I wanted him to believe the world could still be kind, that true love actually existed, but never, not in my worst nightmares, did I imagine he would turn into this cold, selfish, ungrateful person. As furious as I am right now, I also feel a strange relief. Thank God I never mentioned the inheritance. If they had known that the $5 million had already been legally transferred to my name, I can only imagine how much worse things could have gotten. I looked at David with an icy, unwavering stare. If this is how heartless you are, then so be it. From now on, we are done. You and I have nothing to do with each other anymore. I picked my suitcase up off the floor and turned to leave, but Mrs. Parker suddenly grabbed my arm. "What is this? David is your son. You must be responsible for his future. You can't just pack your bags and leave like this." David joined his mother-in-law. "It's true. What kind of father does that? You raised me, and now you want to wash your hands of me. It is completely irresponsible." I let out a cold laugh. "You are an educated man, a learned person, and that is the argument you use. Legally, a parent is only obligated to care for a child until they are 18 years old. I supported David well into his 20s. What else do you expect?" David's face twisted, his voice rising in fury. That is not being a father. You were the one who made the wrong choices and are trying to pay off your guilt. Everything miserable in my life is your fault. You owe me forever." Then he screamed with pure hatred, "Did you ask my permission when you decided to bring me into this world?" I almost burst into laughter at the sheer absurdity of the situation. He was completely unhinged. I looked at him as if he were a stranger, someone I no longer recognized. "I must have been blind to have raised someone like you. And if you have such deep and distorted philosophical questions, maybe you should ask your biological mother, the one who left you on the doorstep of a church." I do not know if he even understood what I had just said. He stood frozen for a moment, confused, but the fury still clung to his face. It did not matter whether he understood or not. It was no longer my problem. I broke free from Mrs. Parker's grip and walked toward the door without looking back. Almost immediately, I heard furious screaming behind me. "You are denying your own son. You are not even human. Don't be so proud, Robert. When you are old, sick, and no one wants to care for you, we will see how far this independence gets you. No one is going to hire a man your age. When you hit rock bottom, do not come crawling back to us." I stopped, slowly turned around, and looked at them coldly. "You are the ones who should be worried about yourselves," I said calmly. "Do not forget that this apartment you live in, this apartment you treat as a family heirloom, was bought with every dollar I saved over the years. If I decide to take it back, do not be so sure you will still have a place to live." David ran to the door, pointing his finger at me, boiling with rage. "Don't you even think about touching this apartment. It is in Sarah's and my name. It is legally ours. You have no right." The more he screamed, the firmer I felt. "Then listen closely. I couldn't care less if I have to spend the value of 2 apartments. I will not let this property stay in the hands of a bunch of ungrateful wretches." David's eyes widened in disbelief. Then he burst into a mocking laugh. "You have completely lost your mind. 2 apartments? You probably don't even have $1,000 in your bank account. This apartment is ours. It is marital property. You are nothing but a failed nurse trying to bite off more than you can chew. Get out of here. People like you deserve to rot on the streets." With those words, he slammed the door in my face. I did not answer. I did not argue. I did not even flinch. I did not. I simply walked to the elevator. I took out my phone and started scrolling through listings for luxury penthouses in the best areas of the city. A bitter smile played on my lips. If I did not move into the best penthouse in town, I would be doing a disservice to the $5 million sitting comfortably in my account. That night, I checked into the Four Seasons Hotel, the most exclusive in the city, and the next day I contacted Mrs. Miller's personal lawyer to start the legal proceedings and recover everything that was rightfully mine. Over the next few days, I lived in that hotel while diving deep into the city's luxury real estate market, searching for properties, analyzing listings, and setting up tours. A week later, I had an appointment to visit a highly sought-after penthouse residence in the most exclusive neighborhood. It was the most prestigious real estate development in the city. What I had not anticipated was that the real estate agent assigned to show me the property would be none other than Jessica, Mrs. Parker's niece, and Sarah's cousin. The project's showroom was packed, despite the starting price of the penthouses exceeding $5 million. The exclusivity of the development had drawn a steady stream of potential buyers. I had just stepped into the grand lobby when a young woman with long hair and an eager smile approached me. "Good afternoon, sir. Would you like me to go over the details of the project with you? I can show you the model units." I was following her toward the display area, but we hadn't taken more than a few steps when a sharp voice echoed across the room. "Who is screening clients today? Are we just letting anyone in now?" I looked up. It was her, Jessica, Mrs. Parker's niece and Sarah's cousin. We had only met a few times, but she had left a lasting impression with her classic social climber attitude, the kind that oozes arrogance in every word and movement, always bragging about only dealing with high society clients. Before I could react, she was already marching toward us, her heels clicking confidently, her eyes full of disdain. "Robert, what are you doing here?" I looked at her coldly and kept walking. "I'm here to look at a property. Is there a problem?" She immediately stepped in front of me, blocking my path with a malicious smirk. "A retired nurse? Do you think you can afford this place? Do not tell me you're just here for the free coffee and pastries. I've seen plenty of people like you, pretending to be buyers just to get a free tasting." People around us began to stare and whisper, their expressions wearing that uncomfortable mix of judgment and curiosity. Some even nodded slightly, as if to say, "She isn't wrong." The young assistant next to me spoke politely, trying to diffuse the situation. "Jessica, I am not busy. I can show this gentleman the units." But Jessica shoved her aside without hesitation, her eyes burning with contempt. "And who do you think you are to teach me how to do my job?" The young woman shrank back, intimidated. Then Jessica waved over 2 security guards. "You two, escort this visitor out immediately." The showroom fell silent, all eyes fixed on us. I calmly raised my hand, stopping the guards before they could get any closer. "I came here to look at a property. On what grounds are you kicking me out? I want to speak to a manager." I turned to the crowd. "You are all here to look at properties as well. Tell me, have I done anything inappropriate?" The security guards hesitated. I was not backing down, and they clearly did not want to escalate a confrontation. Jessica stood there with her arms crossed, scoffing loudly. "Go ahead, put on your little show. Let's see how far you get with this act." That was when a young man in a crisp white shirt hurried over, wearing a polite, professional smile. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Frank, the sales director for this project. How can I help you?" Before I could speak, Jessica interrupted. "Frank, he is only here for the free giveaways. I was about to have security escort him out." Frank frowned slightly but maintained a courteous tone. "Sir, would you be willing to provide some form of financial proof? As you know, this presentation is strictly by invitation, and we must verify purchasing power." Without hesitation, I pulled a folder from my bag. They already verified my documents at the entrance. Jessica snatched the folder out of my hand and opened it dramatically. $5 million? Are you mocking me?" She yelled loud enough for half the showroom to hear. "He is a nurse. He cannot possibly have this kind of money. I know his background better than anyone here. This has to be a forgery. We cannot let someone like this scam us." Frank stood there, frowning deeply, clearly caught in the middle of the confusion. I didn't bother arguing. Instead, I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and held it up for him to see. The young assistant leaned in, counting under her breath. 1 million, 2 million, 4 million. Oh my God, over $5 million. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People's eyes widened, no longer judging but amazed, curious, even slightly impressed. Someone near me muttered, "Wow, does he really have that kind of money?" Jessica lost all her color, rapidly turning from red to pale to green, and then to a ghostly white. She looked as though she wanted the floor to swallow her whole, but she still wasn't giving up. She kept insisting, her voice shrill and stubborn. "Frank, this mobile app must be fake. He cannot have that much money." Frank's face darkened, his brow furrowing deeply. "Jessica, that is enough." Then turning to me with a composed and respectful tone, "Sir, I offer my most sincere apologies. This is clearly a misunderstanding on our part, and we will correct it immediately. I will assign our most experienced client advisor to assist you." I nodded slightly, offering a calm smile. Then I turned to the young woman who had greeted me at the entrance. "That won't be necessary. She is perfect, very professional. I want her to show me the property." Frank looked a bit uneasy. "Actually, she just started. She is still in training." "I like her," I said firmly, leaving no room for argument. "I am buying the penthouse today, and I want to close the deal through her." Frank nodded immediately, embarrassed but eager. "Of course. Absolutely. Emily, make sure to take excellent care of our VIP client." Jessica stood off to the side, her face hard, her lips trembling with pent-up frustration. She watched me walk away, boiling with rage. Then she muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "Just a public hospital nurse pretending to be someone important." I ignored her completely and pointed at the scale model in the center of the showroom. "I want to see this one," I told Emily. As soon as I laid eyes on that penthouse, I knew it was perfect. Breathtaking ceiling height in the living room, a massive terrace with an outdoor kitchen, a stunning view of the city skyline, a master suite well over 500 square feet. Most importantly, it was fully furnished and ready for move-in. "I will take it," I said without hesitation. "Let's start the paperwork." Emily's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Sir, are you sure you don't want to see other options? I am completely free. I would be thrilled to show you more." "Not necessary," I replied. "This one is more than enough." She could barely contain her joy. "Sir, this will be my very first closed sale. You are my lucky charm." We went to the signing area, and as I was reviewing the paperwork, a low murmur started behind me. "Unbelievable! He signed without even blinking. $5 million didn't even make him flinch. That is real wealth." "Don't let him fool you," someone muttered. "Didn't Jessica say he is just a nurse? He's probably parading around with his boss's money. Nowadays, even the domestic staff knows how to put on a show. But he signed with whoever's money it is. What kind of employer would trust a houseworker with that much cash? Millions." Then Jessica's voice cut through the whispers, laced with that gossipy venom she wielded so well. "Oh, you have no idea. He is not just an ordinary nurse. He is one of those special caregivers for rich, older men. You know, it's not just about giving shots and taking temperatures, if you catch my drift. I can't believe it, at his age. How disgusting. Some people will sell anything for money. If his family knew, wouldn't they be ashamed?" I put down the contract and turned to Emily. "Emily," I said with a firm smile, "could you please call Frank over? I would like to purchase another property." The room went completely silent, as if the air itself had frozen. Emily's eyes widened, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Sir, are you sure you want another property?" "That is correct," I said calmly. "One to live in, one as an investment." Then my smile widened a little. "Although I do have a small favor to ask of Frank." Frank hurried back, his smile even brighter than before, practically radiating enthusiasm. "Hello again, sir. How can I help you?" "I confirmed the purchase of the first property," I said. "I'm ready to sign the contract, and I would like to add a second unit as well." Then I paused, my tone turning icy. "But I expect your team to address the highly inappropriate behavior of certain employees." Frank's smile vanished. Smile. His gaze swept the room and quickly landed on Jessica. "Jessica," he said sharply, "you are causing problems again. Apologize to the client immediately." Jessica raised her chin proudly, refusing to yield. "Why should I apologize? I only told the truth. He works as a special caregiver for rich, older men. Do not look at me like that. His own son confirmed it to me." I slowly raised my head and narrowed my eyes, staring directly at her. "You claim my son told you that? Then let me return the favor. He also told me that your little portfolio of closed sales didn't come from your supposed skills, but from the nights you spent in bed with your clients. Is that true?" Jessica's face lost all color. Her lips trembled. "You are lying. That is slander." "Ah, you just slandered me minutes ago, and now suddenly you understand what defamation is." I turned to Frank, who immediately took the hint. His expression turned grim. "Jessica, that is enough. Security, escort her out of the building. As of today, you're fired." Jessica panicked. Tears welled up in her eyes and spilled over. "Frank, I wasn't lying. He really does work as a caregiver." But Frank's tone remained firm. "You have severely violated the company's code of conduct. Your employment is terminated effective immediately." I raised my hand to stop the security guards from moving in. "Hold on," I said calmly. "She is not going anywhere just yet. She defamed me publicly, and I am not letting that slide. Right there on the spot, I took out my phone and dialed a number. Hello, I need the police. I would like to file a complaint for defamation and harassment. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived at the showroom. After listening to my account and assessing the incident, they gave Jessica a formal warning and made it very clear. If she does not offer a public apology, you have every right to press legal charges. Cornered and trembling with rage, Jessica finally muttered through clenched teeth, I apologize. She shot one last hate-filled glare at me and Emily before storming out, her eyes burning with jealousy, especially when she saw Emily preparing to close the second sale. The same Emily she had looked down on just an hour prior was now the star salesperson of the day. In the end, I signed the contracts for both properties. I paid in cash without even hesitating. Emily stayed by my side, her eyes shining with emotion, struggling to form the words. Sir, I don't even know how to thank you enough. I have been here for 4 months without closing a single sale, and today, 2 units back to back. You are truly my miracle. To show her gratitude, she insisted on personally organizing a professional cleaning and preparing for my move-in. I gladly accepted. For the first time in years, I felt truly light, as if all the humiliation, the resentment, and the bitterness had been swept out the door of my new penthouse, like dust. That night, right after I returned to the hotel, my phone rang. It was David. So what did you do to ruin Jessica's job? The whole family is coming down on us now, demanding answers. How do you plan to fix this mess? I replied nonchalantly, Let them come. That is their problem. I already told you, we are done. I don't owe them anything. You caused problems, and now you expect us to deal with the fallout. It's not fair. That made my blood boil. Problems? Are you kidding me? Jessica defamed me in public. She did this to herself. The police were there. Do you think they showed up by coincidence? If this turns into a bigger issue, do not think I will stay quiet either. David stayed silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his tone had visibly softened. All right, let's forget about it. By the way, who is your new boss? They must be insanely rich. And it sounds like they treat you pretty well too, right? I laughed sarcastically. He was back, sniffing out the money like a bloodhound. It doesn't matter who they are. It is none of your business, David. Let me repeat this one last time. We are done forever. With those words, I hung up and blocked all of his numbers, Sarah's numbers, and the entire family's. But what I hadn't expected was that just a few days after moving into my new home, I would run into someone I never thought I would see again. Mrs. Parker. That afternoon, I was at a high-end music store in a luxury mall downtown, browsing their selection of grand pianos. I had just sat down on the bench, ready to test the keys, when the entrance doors swung open, and a flurry of footsteps echoed through the space. Mrs. Parker walked in, surrounded by her usual circle of high society friends, their voices loud and shrill with entitlement. Didn't you need to wash your hands before touching that instrument? Wasn't it a hospital where you worked all those years? Lord knows what kind of germs you have under your fingernails. Who would have thought such an expensive piano could be so carelessly contaminated? Her little group laughed and whispered among themselves, glaring at me with barely disguised disgust. So this is the caregiver, father-in-law you were talking about? One of them asked, not even bothering to lower her voice. Typical. He can't afford one, so he comes here to pretend. How embarrassing. Another woman, her hair pulled back into a dramatic bun and massive sunglasses resting on her head, shot me a disdainful look. Ugh, there is nothing more irritating than someone trying to play aristocrat while carrying counterfeit bags. The 2 salesmen in the store exchanged a subtle look, clearly uncomfortable. One of them approached me and offered a warm, professional smile. Please feel free to continue testing the piano, sir. That is exactly what they are here for. There is no obligation to buy. I nodded politely, then turned back to the sheet music and prepared to play, trying to ease the growing tension in the room. The other salesman approached Mrs. Parker and her group. Ladies, welcome. Is there a specific model you would like to see? I would be happy to show you our selection." Mrs. Parker shot me a glacial glare, then replied dryly, "We were thinking of taking a look around, but now I am not so sure. Clearly, this store does not care about its instruments or its clientele." I offered the salesman a calm smile and said, "I'm definitely going to need a little more time to test a few out. I fully intend to make a purchase today." The woman with the buns scoffed and threw herself into a nearby armchair, crossing her arms. Of course he is going to buy. I am going to sit right here and watch how he manages it. I can't wait to see how he is going to slink out of here without buying a thing. Mrs. Parker tugged at her friend's arm. "Let's go. Let's go somewhere else. Just being near people like him puts me in a bad mood." But I knew better. Mrs. Parker had heard from Jessica that I had bought 2 penthouses. She clearly didn't know whether to believe it, and she was afraid I might prove her wrong again. But her friend was not easily swayed. "I'm staying right here," the woman with the bun said with a wicked grin. "I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if I didn't get to watch this man thoroughly embarrass himself." Those words seemed to rally the rest of the group. They all stayed, waiting for what they assumed would be an entertaining disaster. I picked one of my favorite pieces and let my fingers rest gently on the keys. The notes drifted through the room, soft and steady. The melody of Clair de Lune filled the air. The woman with the bun twisted her mouth in a mock sneer and scoffed. "What is that noise? Sounds like a racket. Who taught him how to play? He thinks he is in a piano store making all that racket. Spare me." But before I could reply, the salesman beside me began to applaud, genuine admiration in his eyes. "Sir, that was magnificent. Honestly, that is one of the most emotional renditions of Clair de Lune I have heard in a long time." The woman with the bun rolled her eyes so hard she almost tipped backward. "Oh, please. If he were so talented, he wouldn't be stuck in the dead-end life he has now. Your flattery is a little too obvious, honey." That was when a few young people walked into the store. They didn't say a word, just stood behind me, listening in silence. The moment I lifted my fingers from the keys, a spontaneous round of applause erupted behind me. "Wow, that was incredible. I have studied piano for years, and I still can't bring that level of emotion to Clair de Lune. Seriously, you captured that dreamy, misty atmosphere effortlessly. It's amazing." Mrs. Parker stood there, her brow furrowed, her eyes narrowed in confusion. She could not understand how someone she had always looked down on could play with so much grace, so much skill. The truth was, I owed this moment of peace and music to my late employer. She came from a prestigious family and was the most elegant, sincere woman I had ever met. Not once did she look down her nose at me. In fact, she treated me more like a younger brother than an employee. Every time I had free time, she invited me to study music, painting, and literature with her, and I never refused. I studied with dedication, deeply grateful for her generosity and patience. Over the years, it didn't just change my lifestyle, it transformed my entire mind. I kept playing, letting the keys carry my thoughts, while the face of the woman with the buns soured under the growing stream of praise. She lowered her head, clearly disturbed. Then, in one last desperate attempt to save face, she snapped her head up. "So what if he can play one song? Big deal. If he is really that impressive, he should pay for the piano right now." I had already made up my mind. Calmly, I handed my card to the salesman. "Thank you, sir," he said cheerfully. "That will be $60,000. I entered my PIN. "Transaction approved. Sir, could I have your name to finalize the invoice?" he asked. "Of course," I said, and spelled out Robert. The woman with the bun went pale. Her head snapped toward Mrs. Parker in disbelief. "You said he worked for someone else, that the penthouses he bought weren't even his. How embarrassing!" Mrs. Parker's face twisted. She stepped closer, her expression caught between disbelief and something much more complicated. "Did you buy this piano all by yourself, and were those 2 penthouses really yours?" "I am the owner. The invoices and contracts have my name on them. If they aren't mine, then whose would they be? Her face contorted instantly. A storm of shock, envy, suspicion, and bitter regret crossed her features. Robert, you were just a nurse. Where is all this money coming from? Every dollar I spend was earned legally and in my own right. My voice was sharp, cold. Mrs. Parker scoffed. Come on, you must have done something shady to get that. The woman with the bun immediately backed her up. Yeah, maybe he is a scam artist. That is how people make quick money these days. No sooner had those words left her mouth than another woman, who had remained silent until then, suddenly exploded. What scam artist? Do not joke about that. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking. Hello, police? I need the police. There is a scam artist here. Before anyone could react, she hung up and rushed toward me, trying to grab my clothes in a fit of rage. The store employees hurried over to hold her back. She was crying, screaming, completely hysterical. I finally understood the reason for her breakdown. She had been scammed and lost over $300,000 8 months ago. She was never able to get it back, and the pain festered so deeply inside her that the mere mention of a scam broke her control. Her fury was not directed at me. It was directed at a shadow from her past. The police arrived quickly, and to my surprise, they were the same 2 officers I had met the day I bought the penthouses. One of them raised his eyebrows in recognition, a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Ah, it is you again, sir. I nodded politely, but before I could speak, the woman with curly hair ran up and screamed, He is a scammer! Officer, arrest him immediately! The officer's expression turned serious. Ma'am, do you have any proof of this accusation? Proof? She replied. Of course not. I'm just giving you a tip. You should investigate him. Come on, how can a nurse buy penthouses and expensive pianos? Does that seem normal to you? The officer sighed, opening his hands. Maybe he won the lottery. It happens. Mrs. Parker intervened immediately, her voice harsh. Him winning the lottery? Don't be ridiculous. He has never had a lucky day in his life. Growing up in poverty, a failed marriage, a low-class job. People like him do not win by luck. They get desperate. He has no education and no career path. What else could he have done besides some shady business to get that kind of money? The officer's expressions hardened. Ma'am, I advise you to watch your words. Accusations without proof constitute defamation and personal attacks. We can open a file on this if necessary. Mrs. Parker's face went pale. She fell silent instantly. A mix of emotions stirred inside me. Frustration, pain, anger, but above all, clarity. Life had not been easy. I grew up alone. After the divorce, I bent over backwards to support a son who never appreciated what I did. And now the very people who had once benefited from my sacrifices were using my lowest points as ammunition to attack me. If I had an enemy in life, it was Mrs. Parker, David, and Sarah. They were not just a nuisance. They were true curses in my story. But now, finally, I saw them for what they really were. I took my phone, opened the banking app, and without saying a word, turned the screen toward Mrs. Parker, holding it up so she and everyone else could see. You don't want to see me happy. What a shame for you. It seems the heavens had other plans. Look, over $5 million. All legal, all mine. No dirty secrets, no tricks, just blessings you will never understand. If that makes you sick, well, I hope it ruins your appetite. You want to accuse me of sleeping my way to the top? Sue me. I will be waiting. The glass of water slipped from Mrs. Parker's hand and shattered on the floor with a loud crash. I could almost hear the crunch of her pride breaking into pieces. $5 million? How on earth does he have that kind of money? Her voice trembled, panic breaking through her disbelief. Then her expression twisted, almost as if something had just suddenly made sense. Ah, now I understand. That is why you cut ties with your son. You got rich and threw him away like trash. How heartless, Robert. It is unbelievable. I turned to her, my gaze sharp and unwavering. Do not twist the story, Mrs. Parker. I was ready to leave every last dime to your son-in-law and my son. That was my plan. But then the two of you decided I was a burden as soon as I lost my job. You threw me out like trash. Did you think I forgot? That house you live in, every dollar that bought it came from me, and not only did you kick me out, you wanted me to scrub floors in a second-rate retirement home just to keep earning for your family. You even suggested I go work for some rich older man as a special caregiver. God knows what kind of service you had in mind. Tell me, Mrs. Parker, do you have a single shred of decency left? I turned to the growing crowd of onlookers. Tell me, doesn't this bunch of ingrates deserve everything they lost? The energy of the crowd shifted. Their eyes, previously full of gossip, now boiled with judgment, directed straight at Mrs. Parker and her friends. Mrs. Parker's face turned red, like a scammer caught in the act. He's lying. We never said he should go work for an old man. Ah, I said calmly. I should play the recording for everyone here. Let them hear your exact words. Her face went pale, and for a second I saw real fear in her eyes. That recording is probably edited. I will not listen to your nonsense. Her voice cracked as she turned around, backing toward the exit. Robert, you are cruel to the core. You will get what you deserve someday. And with those words, she rushed out, slamming the door behind her. I finally exhaled. It was over for now, but I knew better than to think it was truly finished. With so much money on the line, people like Mrs. Parker and David never stay quiet for long. What I did not expect was how quickly David would re-enter the picture. The very next morning, the concierge delivered a massive bouquet of flowers, claiming someone had left it at the door for me. I frowned, dragged the flowers inside, and looked for a card. Right in the center, there was a card wishing me a great weekend, signed with love, your son David. I almost burst into a laugh, disgusted to my core. It was so shameless that it was almost comical. Without hesitating, I took the bouquet and threw it straight into the kitchen trash. Then I took a picture. Crushed petals, bent stems, and the crumpled card, all in one frame, and I sent it to the concierge. From now on, reject anything this person sends. Also, please forward this picture to the sender. I did not just want him rejected, I wanted him humiliated. Sure enough, I never received another bouquet from him. But he did not give up. He only escalated. He started waiting outside the gated community every single day. Rain or shine, weekday or weekend, he would be there lurking desperately. Every time I left or arrived, he put on another pathetic show, like a character in a cheap tragedy. One day he even knelt on the sidewalk, crying hysterically. Dad, please do not be angry anymore. Come home. I was wrong, Dad. No matter what happens, I am still your son. How can you be so cold to me? I didn't even bother looking at him. His performances simply gave me the creeps. I finally got so sick of this spectacle that I hired a full-time driver. Every day I would sit in the back seat with the windows rolled up, gliding from the front gate straight into the garage of my penthouse, with no eye contact, no conversation, and no chance for him to reach me. David kept this up for 2 solid weeks, but when it became clear I wasn't giving in, he finally gave up. At least I thought he had given up. In reality, he changed his tactics. He dug around and somehow managed to contact my ex-wife Grace, who had once also been David's mother. That was when things really started taking a turn I had not anticipated. David was no longer trying to reconcile. He was trying to control me, pressure me, and break me completely. It became obvious that if he could not get what he wanted, he would rather see me destroyed. One afternoon, my phone rang. It was Grace. We hadn't spoken in over 20 years. I had no idea how she got my number. I think I should just warn you, she said nonchalantly. David came to see me, crying and begging me to talk to you so you would come home. I don't know what happened between you two, and frankly, I told him it was none of my business. I just reminded him that I am not his biological mother. I even added that whatever is going on between you two doesn't concern me. I am a stranger. But he insisted I was lying. He even showed up at my office, causing a scene. I had no choice. I had to take a maternity test to shut his mouth. I didn't tell him the whole truth. I kept my promise from all those years ago. I didn't reveal his real past. So in short, now he knows I am not his mother, but you are still his only father. I hung up, already bracing myself. I knew it was only a matter of time before David came knocking on my door again. When he did, I would be ready. I would tell him everything, the truth I had been so desperate to avoid. I would tell him to go look for the mother who had abandoned him in a church and to stop trying to destroy my life. But that confrontation never came. Instead, David took a darker turn, one I hadn't anticipated. About a week later, I noticed something strange. The way people in the neighborhood looked at me had changed. Their stares lingered longer. Their smiles grew thinner, more forced. At first, I ignored it, until Emily called me one afternoon. "Robert, I just wanted to say that I know you are a good person. Please don't let what people are saying bother you." What were people saying? I was confused. That was when I discovered what was really going on. I had become an internet sensation, but not the good kind. David had started doing daily live streams on a popular social media platform under the channel title, "How My Father Abandoned Me." I clicked and saw the full picture. He hadn't directly accused me of being a sugar baby or anything scandalous. No, he had opted for something much more insidious. He had crafted a heartbreaking, manipulative story, painting himself as an abandoned and heartbroken son, while transforming me into a cold, ruthless, and greedy villain. In those live streams, he said things like, "My father never truly loved me. I worked so hard, I studied so much, and he wouldn't even support me with the smallest things." The year I started college, he moved to another city to work as a private caregiver for a rich person, leaving me to live alone in a tiny apartment. When I got married, he didn't contribute a single dime, and even when my wife planned to get pregnant, he never offered a crumb of help. Now that he suddenly got rich, he cut me off completely as if I never existed. Now he lives in a mansion, drives a luxury car, and enjoys a high-class life, while I am judged and humiliated in the streets. I don't even want his money. I just want him to acknowledge me as his son, but he won't even say my name. He should be ashamed. The comments section exploded. People were divided into two camps. Some sympathized with him, others called me heartless, and of course, there were the instigators. A father like that doesn't deserve to be called a father. He's so pathetic. I would do anything to give him the love he never had. His live stream blew up, his follower count skyrocketed, and he even started selling merchandise on his channel, riding the wave of pity donations from supposed sympathizers. "Here's all the love your father never gave you. You deserve better, good guy. He doesn't deserve happiness." And then things got even uglier. People started digging into my personal life. My name, my photo, my address. Everything began circulating in the comment sections and reposts. I had officially become the face of a social media villain, the most heartless father on the internet. And then that night, my phone rang again. This time, it was my lawyer. "Robert, we can proceed with legal action immediately. We can file for the removal of defamatory content, demand public apologies, and seek compensation for damages." I paused for a few seconds, then I smiled calmly, unhurried. Let him keep it up a little longer. I intend to handle this myself first. That same night, I registered my own account on the platform and launched my own live channel. I titled it, "So This is the Father Who Abandoned David." First, I jumped into David's live stream and sent several donations of hundreds of dollars, instantly drawing attention and making the live chat feed explode. Then I sent a message to the screen for everyone to see. "Hello, everyone. I am the heartless father David is talking about. He has been crying for weeks, saying I cut off his financial support. Come to my channel. I am giving away $20,000 in cash prizes tonight. First come, first served." Within seconds, a massive wave of viewers jumped over to my live stream. The traffic exploded violently, and I started sending out the promised rewards. The comment section erupted with excitement. Thanks, Sugar Daddy. This is the true king of content. I am taking notes. He is more loving than my own mother. Riding the wave of the viral moment, I officially started my live broadcasts. I didn't waste any time sugarcoating anything. I spoke directly to the camera. First of all, yes, I did cut financial ties with David. But that does not make me heartless, and it certainly does not mean I abandoned him. People deserve the full story. I didn't walk away because I stopped loving him. I walked away because his greed became unbearable. When I first received the inheritance from my late employer, my intention was to leave it all to David and his wife. But do you know what their response was? Instead of gratitude, they accused me of wanting to leech off them and teamed up to throw me out. They even suggested I move in with some random old man as a caregiver, because in their minds, my only value was to keep working and funneling money into their household. To them, I wasn't a father. I was a bank account. As I spoke, I showed scans of the trust documents from my former employer, a legally notarized statement showing that I had inherited over $5 million in assets. The money I have comes from a legitimate trust, left to me by a woman who treated me like family. She had no children and made me her sole beneficiary. The comments exploded again. 5 million? What kind of boss does that? Finally, karma rewarding a good heart. This isn't coldness. This is clarity. Of course, not everyone was convinced. Some skeptics appeared. You are still his father. Shouldn't you support your son? Cutting him off after marriage without a blessing is heartless, I replied calmly without blinking. Let me ask you all a question. Does supporting a son mean I should be his personal ATM forever? I raised him alone since he was 2 years old. I paid his tuition. I bought a house for him. What did I get in return? Suspicion, rejection, disrespect, and being forced out of my own home. They wanted me to keep working like a machine to subsidize their lifestyle, while treating me like a burden. Then I played my final card, an audio recording of David on the phone, trying to arrange for me to become a caregiver for an older man. The call had been captured by the older man's home security system. It was undeniable proof. The comments blew up once more. Unbelievable. This isn't just leeching, it's financial abuse. Cutting him off isn't cruelty, it's survival. He weaponized guilt, it seems. He isn't crying for love, he is crying for money. Well done, sir. That son deserved to be cut off. I knew this was only the beginning. David didn't miss a father. He missed his cash cow. This war was just getting started. I looked at the stream of comments on the screen and let out a small, silent laugh. Then I leaned toward the camera and spoke directly to that audience. The truth is, there was never any need to cut ties with David. Instantly, question marks flooded the comment thread. I continued calmly, because David was never my biological son to begin with. I adopted him when I was volunteering at a local child protective services center. He was only 2 years old then, born with a severe congenital heart defect and abandoned by his biological parents on the doorstep of a church. He was barely clinging to life when I found him. I took him home out of pure compassion. I spent every dollar I had to get him medical care. And my divorce from my ex-wife was not because of infidelity. It was because she insisted on having a biological child and refused to keep raising David. I was given a choice: return David to the system or leave my marriage and raise him alone. I chose David. I gave up my marriage. I gave up the chance to have my own children just to give him a chance to live. I worked night shifts, served in restaurants, cleaned houses, whatever it took. I saved and saved until he was healthy again. I put him through college. I even bought a house for him with the money I earned by the sweat of my brow. And what did I get in return? He refused to let me live in that very house. He kicked me out like a stranger. Now he slanders me online, pretending I abandoned him, and even spreading rumors that I slept my way to wealth. Tell me, how am I supposed to respond to someone like that? As I spoke, I uploaded a series of images: hospital bills, medical invoices, tuition receipts, bus passes, all the fragments of a past life, An entire life of sacrifice captured in paper and ink. The comments exploded. He is a monster. Who does that to a man who saved his life? He used his adoptive father like a sponge, then tossed him aside, living in the house he paid for and still kicking him out. Unbelievable. God gave him life. He gave him everything else, and he turned around and stabbed him in the back. The backlash was immediate. Viewers rushed over to David's live stream and began flooding his comment section with outrage. How can we support someone like you? Shame on you, playing the victim while bleeding your father dry. You are the heartless one, not him. David's face turned visibly pale on camera. Why do you believe him? He is lying. If I wasn't his real son, why would he have done all that for me? He is manipulating you. No one would go that far for a child that isn't theirs. Back on my stream, a few viewers demanded concrete proof. Without hesitating, I uploaded a scanned copy of the official adoption certificate. This is a government-issued document. Verified, public, and authentic. The comment section erupted once more. That is it. End of discussion. He is telling the truth. This isn't just betrayal. It is a moral bankruptcy. He used his love, his money, his life, and still tried to destroy him. Report him. He doesn't deserve a platform. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, David doubled down. So what if I wasn't his real son? He didn't have to save me. I never asked him to do that. Maybe if he hadn't taken me, I would have been adopted by a real family. He ruined my life. He never should have interfered with my destiny. That was the final straw. The internet exploded. You are mad because he saved you? That is the most disgusting thing I have ever heard. Let the whole world see the true face of this monster. Report him right now. In less than a day, public opinion completely reversed. David went from being an abandoned victim to an ungrateful parasite, feeding off the blood of his adoptive father. His broadcasting channel was permanently suspended by the platform that very night. My lawyer filed a formal lawsuit for defamation and harassment against him, demanding financial compensation for damages. We also filed an injunction to legally forbid him from making any further defamatory statements or attacking me through social media platforms. Eventually, the court ruled in our favor. David was found guilty of violating cybersecurity and defamation laws. He was ordered to pay damages and cover all legal costs. His streaming privileges were revoked, his social media accounts permanently banned, but the most important part was the financial ruling. He was ordered to pay me $15,000 in moral damages, plus all the legal fees, which amounted to another $10,000, $25,000 that, of course, he didn't have. The judge gave him 6 months to pay, or he would face asset seizure. I saw his face turn pale when he heard the verdict. Sarah was sitting in the back of the courtroom, arms crossed, her gaze cold and distant. There was no longer any compassion in her eyes, only calculation. She was measuring how much time she had left before jumping off the sinking ship. Mrs. Parker tried to approach me after the hearing with that nervous smile she used whenever she needed something. Robert, let's be reasonable. David made mistakes, yes, but he is still your son. Are you really going to completely destroy him? I looked at her without blinking. He is no longer my son, Mrs. Parker. That became clear when he threw me out onto the street and told me I deserved to die alone. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a meeting with my lawyer to get my apartment back. Her face twisted in panic. The apartment? You can't do that. It is David and Sarah's marital property. Check the legal documents, I said coldly. Every dollar of the down payment came from me. Every monthly payment for the first 5 years was paid with my hard work. I have all the bank receipts, and my lawyer has already filed the lawsuit. In 3 months, that apartment will be back in my name, and you all will have to find somewhere else to live. The legal battle for the apartment was fierce but brief. My legal team presented irrefutable evidence, bank transfer receipts and account statements that clearly showed I had paid the entire $25,000 down payment, plus the monthly installments for 5 consecutive years. David and Sarah had put the apartment in their name, taking advantage of my trust and paternal love. But the law was clear. The origin of the funds was traceable and documented. Mrs. Parker hired 3 different lawyers, each one more expensive than the last, trying to find some legal loophole. But there was nothing to be done. The truth was there in black and white on every receipt, on every bank transfer. The judge ruled in my favor in less than 2 months. Mr. Robert Mendoza has conclusively proven that he financed the entirety of the property's acquisition. Although the title is in the defendants' names, the evidence demonstrates that this was an abuse of familial trust. The immediate reversion of the property title to the rightful owner is hereby ordered. 6 months after that ruling, I finally got back the home that had once been mine. Thanks to a meticulous legal process, the apartment was completely transferred back to my name. On the day everything was finalized, I stood in the living room, looking at the familiar curtains, watching the sunlight spill across the hardwood floor I had polished with my own hands years ago. For the first time in years, I felt truly light, as if I had finally exhaled after holding my breath for decades. 2 weeks before the apartment transfer was finalized, Sarah had already packed her things and moved in with her mother. She left a brief letter on the kitchen table, written in that perfect handwriting she had always used. "I'm not going down with this ship. Good luck, David." She didn't even have the decency to tell him in person. A few days later, my ex-daughter-in-law officially filed for divorce. She signed the papers in her lawyer's office with complete calm, without saying a single extra word. In the division of assets, she asked for nothing. There was nothing to ask for. The apartment was no longer theirs. David owed $25,000 he could never pay back, and his reputation was destroyed across the entire country. It was clear she had finally seen him for what he truly was, a man who complained about being treated unfairly, but never took responsibility for his actions, full of resentments, yet completely devoid of self-awareness. A man who had been given all the love in the world and had turned it into ashes with his own hands. After the divorce, David tried calling me one last time. He left a tearful, pleading voicemail, recorded at 3 a.m. according to the timestamp. "Dad, please. I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. I don't have anyone else. I have no money, no home, no future. Sarah left me. Everyone turned their backs on me. Even Mrs. Parker stopped answering my calls. Help me just this once. I promise I will change. Please, Dad." I listened to the message once. Then I deleted it without replying. I had heard those promises before. I had heard them when he was 8 years old and broke the expensive lamp. I had heard them when he was 16 and got caught cheating on a test. I had heard them when he was 22, and I lent him money he never paid back. David's promises were worthless, because he didn't value himself. And just like that, David disappeared completely from my life. I didn't ask where he had gone, and I had no interest in looking back, but I found out through others. Emily, the young real estate agent who had helped me buy the penthouses, called me one day a few months later. "Robert, I thought you should know. David sold his car for practically nothing. He borrowed money from several friends with false promises that he would double it, and then he fled the country. I heard he is in Canada now. He is claiming he started a new life, that the city was toxic, and that Canada gave him the opportunity his family never did." I smiled bitterly. Even on the run, even thousands of miles away, he was still the eternal victim in his own distorted narrative. Years passed after David vanished from my life. My existence became quiet, productive, and full of the things I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. Painting, music, traveling whenever I wanted, reading without interruption, waking up every morning without the weight of someone else's expectations on my shoulders. During those first few months of freedom, I split my time between my 2 luxury penthouses in the city. I used one as my primary residence and the other as an art and music studio. I set up my grand piano in the second penthouse, right by the windows overlooking the skyline. I spent hours there playing everything Mrs. Miller had taught me, feeling her presence in every note. One day, while I was playing Claire de Lune, Emily came to visit me. She had brought champagne to celebrate the anniversary of our first sail together. "Robert," she said as we toasted on the terrace overlooking the cityscape, "do you ever think about David?" The question caught me by surprise. I stayed silent for a moment, watching the city lights begin to flicker on with the sunset. "Sometimes," I finally admitted, "but not in the way you might think. I don't think about the man he became. I think about the 2-year-old boy with purple lips clinging to my hand in the hospital. I wonder where that child got lost, at what point love turned into greed." Emily nodded understandingly. "Do you think you could have done anything differently?" "No," I answered with certainty. "I gave him everything a father can give. If that wasn't enough, then the problem was never with me. It was with him." That conversation made me reflect on my future. I was 58 years old, owned 2 luxury penthouses, had over $4 million in the bank after all the legal fees, and had absolutely no obligations to anyone. I was free, completely free. But those penthouses, as beautiful as they were not a home. They were symbols of a war I had already won, trophies from a battle I no longer needed to fight. So I made a decision. 6 months after getting David's original apartment back, I put both penthouses up for sale. The real estate market was booming. Luxury properties in the area were selling like hotcakes. Emily, who had now become one of the most successful agents in the firm, handled both sales personally. "Robert," she told me when we closed the final sale, "these penthouses sold for twice what you paid. You made over $5 million in profit on these 2 properties alone." I smiled. Mrs. Miller taught me that the best time to sell is when everyone wants to buy. With that money, plus the original inheritance, and the returns from the wise investments my financial advisor had made, my net worth had grown to nearly $10 million. It was more money than I could ever spend in whatever time I had left to live. I started looking for something different. I didn't want luxury, and I didn't want to impress anyone. I wanted peace. I wanted to wake up to the sound of birds, not traffic. I wanted to see trees from my window, not buildings. I found what I was looking for in a small, quiet lakeside town, a couple of hours outside the city. It was a place where artists went to retire, where time moved slower, where people still greeted each other on the street. The house I bought was not the biggest or the most expensive in town. It was modest compared to the penthouses I had left behind, but it had everything I needed: a garden full of jasmine and bougainvillea, a terrace overlooking the lake, enough space for my piano and my easel, and a library I could finally fill with all the books I had always wanted to read. On the day I moved in, I stood in that garden as the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't have to worry about money, I didn't have to worry about bills, and I didn't have to sacrifice my dreams for anyone else. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of liberation, of gratitude toward Mrs. Miller for giving me this chance to live, truly live, before it was too late. I established a simple but deeply satisfying routine. I woke up with the sunrise, brewed coffee in my kitchen that always smelled of cinnamon and vanilla, and walked barefoot through the dew-damp grass in the garden. I ate breakfast on the terrace, reading the paper, or simply watching the herons fish along the edge of the lake. I spent my mornings painting. I had taken watercolor classes in the city and discovered I had a talent for capturing the lake's landscapes, the surrounding mountains, and the sunsets that looked different every single day. I gave some of my paintings to neighbors, and others I sold in the town's small gallery. Not for the money, but for the pleasure of knowing my art hung on other people's walls, bringing them joy. The afternoons were for music. I played the piano for hours, lost in the compositions of Chopin, Debussy, and Satie. Sometimes I composed my own pieces, simple melodies that captured how I felt in that moment, at peace, whole, finally at home. The people in town accepted me without any questions. They didn't care about my past, my legal battles, or the son who had betrayed me. They just knew me as Robert, the kind man who played the piano beautifully and painted watercolors of the lake. That was enough. I made friends, real people without any pretenses. A retired carpenter named Mark, who taught me woodworking. A yoga teacher named Helen, who helped me find calm through meditation. A writer named James, who shared my love for literature, and with whom I spent entire afternoons discussing novels. For the first time in my life, no one needed me for my money. No one asked me for anything except my company. And that, I discovered, was the greatest luxury of all. 6 months after moving to the lake house, while I was having coffee with Helen at a lakeside cafe, she casually mentioned, "Hey, Robert, didn't you have a son?" My heart stopped for a moment. Why do you ask? I saw something on social media. Someone with your last name, David Mendoza. He was streaming live from Canada, saying some strange things. I felt a knot in my stomach. What kind of things? I'm not sure. He seemed confused. The people in the comments were worried. They were saying he didn't look well. That night, after a lot of internal debate, I looked up his name online. Part of me didn't want to know. Part of me needed to know. What I found broke my heart in a way I hadn't expected. The videos were devastating, not just because of what they showed, but because of what they represented. The complete disintegration of a human being. The first video I found was dated 2 weeks ago. David was sitting on a corner in what looked like downtown Vancouver, his clothes dirty and torn, his hair long and matted. He was talking to the camera with a manic smile that didn't reach his empty eyes. "Hello, everyone. It's David here from Canada. Life is beautiful here. So free. Not like back home where your own family betrays you. No one judges me here. Here, I am free." But his hands were shaking as he spoke. His voice was hoarse and broken, and behind him I could see a shopping cart stuffed with plastic bags. The kind of cart homeless people use to carry everything they own. I kept searching. There were dozens of videos, each one more disturbing than the last. In one, he was screaming at the camera, "My father stole everything from me. Everything. He was a millionaire and left me on the street. Share this. The world needs to know." The comments were a mix of concern and cruelty. "Bro, you need professional help." This guy completely lost his mind. Isn't this the same guy who lied about his dad years ago? Karma. But the video that hit me the hardest was the most recent one, uploaded just 3 days prior. David was sitting next to a trash can in what looked like an alleyway. He was crying, sobbing uncontrollably, gnawing on what looked like a piece of stale bread. Between sobs, he murmured, "Dad, I am sorry. I am so sorry. You were right. You were always right. I ruined everything. I ruined my life. Please, if you are seeing this, help me. I don't have anyone else. I'm alone. I'm so cold. Please, Dad." I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking. For several minutes, I just sat there on my terrace, staring out at the lake without really seeing it. Helen was right. David was not well. He had clearly suffered some kind of mental breakdown. Part of me, the part that had cared for him since he was 2 years old, wanted to catch the first flight to Vancouver, find him, clean him up, feed him, and take him to a hospital. But another part of me, the part that had painfully learned to protect myself, knew that would be a mistake. David hadn't changed. He had simply hit rock bottom. And if I intervened now, I would only restart the cycle. I would rescue him, he would recover, and eventually he would fall right back into his old patterns. He would blame me for something, use me, and destroy me all over again, because that was all he knew how to do. That night, I wrote a letter I would never send. I just needed to get the words out of my system. "David, I see you in those videos, and my heart breaks. Not for what you are now, but for what you could have been. I gave you life twice. Once when I adopted you and saved your physical heart, and again when I raised you trying to save your emotional heart. but I could never save you from yourself. Your greed, your victimhood, your inability to take responsibility for your own choices. All of that came from within you. I didn't turn you into this. You chose this path at every crossroads, when you chose to lie instead of being honest, when you chose to cast blame instead of reflecting, when you chose to destroy instead of build. Now you are reaping what you sowed. And even though it hurts me to see you suffer, I know that rescuing you would only postpone the inevitable. You need to truly hit rock bottom. You need to look at your reflection in the mirror and accept who you are. And only you can do that work. I can no longer save you, David. I no longer should. I have learned that loving someone doesn't mean infinitely sacrificing yourself for them. Sometimes the truest love is letting them face the consequences of their own actions. I wish you peace. I wish you healing. But I can no longer be a part of your life. Goodbye to the son who was never truly mine. Robert. I burned the letter in my living room fireplace that night, watching the words turn to ash. It was symbolic, I suppose, letting go of the last emotional ties that tethered me to him. The next morning I blocked all internet alerts with his name. I would not search for information about him ever again. His life was no longer my responsibility. The months kept passing in town. My life continued its peaceful and fulfilling rhythm. I painted. I played the piano. I made new friends. I went hiking in the mountains with Mark. I took pottery classes with Helen. I wrote poetry with James. One afternoon, almost a year after I had seen those videos of David, Emily called me. "Robert, there is something you need to know." My stomach tightened. What happened? David passed away 3 weeks ago in Vancouver. They found him in a homeless shelter. Apparently he suffered a heart attack. Ironic, right? The very same heart you saved so many years ago. I slowly sat down on my garden bench. How did you find out? Sarah contacted me. She got a call from the consulate. She is still listed as his emergency contact in the records. She asked me to tell you because she doesn't have your number. And what did she do? Nothing. She said it wasn't her problem. She didn't even claim the body. I spent the next 3 days in a fog. Not exactly out of sadness, but something more complex. A mixture of relief, sorrow, guilt, and finally, closure. I decided to do what Sarah hadn't done. I paid for David's body to be flown back home. I organized a simple funeral in a small cemetery here in town. I didn't invite anyone. Not Sarah, not Mrs. Parker, not a single member of that family that had used him and then discarded him. It was just me, the priest, and the cemetery worker. As they lowered the casket into the earth, I spoke softly. David, I gave you everything I could. It wasn't enough, and I have made my peace with that. Rest now. May you find in death the peace you could never find in life. I didn't cry. I had already shed all the tears I had for David years ago. This was just the final closing of a chapter that had ended a long time ago. 3 years have passed since that day. I'm now 62 years old. My hair is completely gray, but my health is excellent. I walk 3 miles every morning around the lake. My garden is more beautiful than ever. My paintings are sold in 3 different galleries across the region. And for the first time in my life, when I look in the mirror, I like the man looking back at me. Sometimes people in town ask me, "Robert, do you have any family?" And I smile and say, "You are my family now," because it's true. Mark, Helen, James, my other neighbors, the owner of the cafe where I eat breakfast every morning, the woman who sells flowers at the market. They are my family, the family I chose, and who chose me, not out of obligation, not out of blood, but out of genuine affection. I have learned that family isn't always the people who share your DNA. Sometimes it's the people who share your table, your laughter, your comfortable silences. Do I regret adopting David? That question no longer torments me like it used to. The answer is complex. I do not regret the 2-year-old boy I saved. That child deserved to live, deserved love, and deserved a chance. But I do regret not setting firmer boundaries. I regret confusing love with endless sacrifice. I regret not seeking professional help when I saw the first signs of his toxic behavior. I regret waiting so long to prioritize myself. The most important lesson I learned is this: you cannot save someone who doesn't want to save themselves. No matter how much you love them, no matter how much you give, no matter how much you sacrifice. If the other person doesn't do the internal work, all your effort is in vain. And the second, equally important lesson: it is never too late to start living for yourself. I was 55 years old when I finally broke free. Some would say I wasted 30 years of my life, but I don't see it that way. Those 30 years taught me compassion, patience, and resilience. They taught me the value of my own dignity. They taught me that love without limits is not love, it is self-destruction. Now, at 62, I probably have another 20 or 30 years ahead of me, health permitting, and I plan to live every single one of those years to the fullest, surrounded by beauty, art, nature, and people who appreciate me for who I am, not for what I can give them.